Okay, we're on Berachot, Perek Bet, Mishnah Aleph. We're beginning the second chapter of Berachot. I would like to dedicate this Mishnah and this learning to the memory of my father, Rav Simcha ben Yitzchak Kalman. Says the Mishnah, Haya koreh b'Torah v'higia zman hamikra im kiven libo yatsa v'im lav lo yatsa. A person who happened to be reading the Torah, just so happens that he's reading Parshat V'Etchanan, and he gets to the Parsha of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Okay? And it just so happened that it's the morning that the time arrived. Higia zman hamikra. The time arrived to read Kriyat Shema. So it's 7 in the morning. He happens to be practicing his landing on V'Etchanan, and he says Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So the question of the Mishnah is, are you Yotzei Mitzvot Kriyat Shema or not? So says the Mishnah, Im kiven libo yatsa, if kiven, intent of his heart, if he had kavanah for his heart, yatsa, he fulfilled the mitzvah, v'im lav, lo yatsa. And if he did not fulfill the mitzvah, if he did not have kavanah, didn't have the proper intent, lo yatsa, then he did not fulfill the commandment of Kriyat Shema. So essentially what the Mishnah is saying is, you have to have kavanah, you have to have the proper intent in order to fulfill the mitzvah. Now, of course, these are only Mishnah, but this is a much larger discussion about an issue called Mitzvot tzrichot kavanah or lo tzrichot kavanah. Does one have to have kavanah, intent, in order to fulfill a mitzvah or not? Let's imagine the following scenario. Certain person, he's not religious at all, and it happens to be the night of Pesach, and he goes out to a very, very fancy restaurant downtown Manhattan, and he orders steak, and they say to him, "Sir, we've just gotten the most expensive bread you could possibly buy, and it just so happens that this bread is the shmor matzah that everybody is eating." He happens to be Jewish. It's the night of Pesach. He's sitting in, fancy restaurant, goat and tail or whatever, in the middle of, God knows where, and he eats this wonderful cracker called matzah. He doesn't know it's matzah, doesn't know it's Pesach, doesn't know he's fulfilling a mitzvah, but technically he did it. Did he fulfill the mitzvah or not? Mitzvot tzrichot kavanah or lo tzrichot kavanah? Just by the way, just to expand on the issue, there's a whole broad spectrum of possibilities. What if he knew it was Pesach? He knew this was matzah, but he didn't care. He's just eating it. He didn't want to fulfill the mitzvah. Or he knew it was Pesach, or he didn't know it was Pesach, but he knows it's matzah, etc., etc. What if I am eating my matzah on Pesach, but I forget? I don't really think about it. I'm just eating it because I'm starving. All of these things go into the discussion of mitzvot tzrichot kavanah. Mitzvot require kavanah or do not require kavanah. It happens to be like so many things in halacha. It's a machloket. It's a dispute. Do we say mitzvot tzrichot kavanah or lo tzrichot kavanah? We paskin generally that mitzvot tzrichot kavanah on some basic level. Mitzvot do require kavanah, and especially here though, mitzvot require kavanah. But Kriyat Shema is a special mitzvah. The Rambam writes, okay, Hakoret Shema, someone who reads Shema, v'lo kiven libo b'pasuk habishon, but he doesn't have kavanah for the first pasuk, shehu Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, lo yatsa yidei chovato. He did not fulfill his commandment, his obligation. V'hashar, but the rest of this, im lo kiven libo yatsa. But the rest of it, if he didn't have kavanah in his heart, he's still Yotzei. What's going on here? This is based on the Gemara. This is from the Gemara in Daf Yud Gimel Amud Bet. The Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, I'm right here. Tanu Rabbanan, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, Ad Kan Tzrichot Kavanat Alev Divrei Rabbi Meir. This pasuk of Hashem Elokeinu, that is the kavanah that you have to have in your heart. Until that point only. Amar Rava halacha ki Rabbi Meir. That is the halacha. And that's how the Rambam paskin. That you have to have a specific kavanah. But here we're not talking about the kavanah of saying, what am I doing here? Why am I saying it? But rather, there needs to be an additional kavanah for Shema. According to the halacha, Shema is called Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim. I'll write it out here. It's called Kabbalat Ol Malchut Shamayim. Okay? It's called the accepting Kabbalah, the accepting of the yoke of Malchut Shamayim, of the kingdom of heaven. When a person says Shema Yisrael, Hero Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. You can't just say the words. You can't even just know I'm saying Shema to fulfill the mitzvah. You have to fulfill in your heart the idea of I'm accepting upon myself this idea that God is the one God of the world. He is our God. He is one. That's one of the reasons why we cover our eyes. We cover our eyes to focus and think and concentrate. Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So says the Mishnah, this is what the Mishnah is saying. Im kiven libo yatsa. V'im lav lo yatsa. Even if you say generally, mitzvot einam tzrichot kavanah, you don't have to have special kavanah, but for certain mitzvot, when the mitzvah implies a certain understanding, a certain mentality, a certain idea that you have to inculcate into your heart, what's the point of just saying the words? We're going to come back to this later on in Shema as well. This is the hardest part of tefillah. The hardest part of davening is the idea of kavanah. How much intent do I have? How much do I focus on what I'm saying, or am I just saying it by rote? It's the most challenging aspect of davening, I believe, today. But at least, says the halacha, according to halacha, at least with the pasuk of Shema Yisrael, you have to focus. You have to have a kavanah just for that. The second part of the Mishnah talks about interruptions in between. And we're going to talk about in between when. Remember, we learned in the Mishnayot past, 2 Mishnayot ago, that there's a whole structure and hierarchy of Berachot Kriyat Shema. So the Berachot of Kriyat Shema, we know have the Berachot, 2 Berachot before and 1 Beracha after, and also the 3 chapters of Shema. We're going to see this in the next Mishnah. But what happens if I need to interrupt in between? Am I allowed to interrupt or not? So this all depends on whether I'm in between chapters, or it depends on whether I'm in the middle of something. So just for example, we have 3 chapters of Shema. I started Shema, and I finished the that's the end of the chapter, and now I'm going to move on to Vahaya. Can I interrupt in between? So in general, according to halacha, we don't interrupt. We don't talk. And in most shuls today, nobody talks. This is, we're in the middle of davening, so especially during Kriyat Shema, please God, no one talks. So this Mishnah is sort of in its idea. I've never actually seen it put into practice. But the question is, can one interrupt? And what are the circumstances that one may interrupt and ask or respond or interact with other people during the Shema? So says the Mishnah, Baprakim, in between the chapters, for example, in between the first and second chapter of Shema, Sho'el mipnei hakavod u'meshib. According to Rabbi Meir, we're going to see he's the first Tana, a person can sho'el. Sho'el means from the term sho'el bishlomo. How are you? If there's a person that commands respect, your Rav comes in, and he doesn't know you're saying Shema or whatever, sho'el mipnei hakavod, shalom alecha Rebbe, how are you? Umeshiv, and especially if he asks you, you're allowed to respond. Uba emtza. What if I'm in the middle? I'm in the Shema Yisrael, and the Rebbe comes along. So then the Rabbi can't answer, I can't ask, but what if I'm afraid? What if there's danger? Actually, yir'ah can also be yir'ah of a Rav or yir'ah of a parent. But in general, yir'ah, most interpretations explain that it's yir'ah, fear. Umeshiv, and you can answer. Okay, so somewhat lenient. This is a strict view, as we're going to see. Rabbi Yehuda says, Va'emtza, okay, in the middle, Sho'el mibnei ha'yira u'meshib mibnei ha'kavod. I'm allowed to ask, I'm allowed to, if I'm afraid of someone, if someone who comes in, I have to have honor for, the king, the whatever, some important general, I'm living in Libya and Gaddafi walks in, Va'emtza, even if in the middle of Shema, Colonel, how are you? He's no longer with us, but what can you do? Umeshib mipnei hakavod. I answer for kavod. Baprakim, but if I'm in between, which is more lenient, sho'el mipnei hakavod, I can initiate for the sake of honor. Umeshiv shalom l'chol adam, and I can respond even to anyone, even if it's not somebody I have to honor or respect or I'm afraid of, but simple human dignity. So it's very interesting because this is the chart of the machloket. So if we look at the machloket here, we see that Rabbi Meir says I can initiate sho'el and answer because of kavod, baprakim in between, but in the middle I can never answer, and I can't initiate and I can't answer. And the only time I can initiate or answer is mipnei yir'ah, if I'm afraid, or there's honor, or if there's awe. According to Rabbi Yehuda, on the other hand, he's more lenient. Okay, first of all, he agrees that I can answer because I'm afraid, but mipnei kavod I can answer even in the middle of Shema. If someone who I have to honor comes in, I can answer him. And he says, Kol Adam, in between, if I'm in between chapters, I can answer anyone. What's interesting about this, is a great conclusion, is the notion of kavanah briot. We're so ritualistic, we never answer or whatever. If somebody comes up to you and says, hi, hello, how are you doing? The idea is that, what is the connection or the interrelationship between our ritual and our kavod? We actually pass with halacha like Rabbi Yehuda. So if somebody came up to you in the Shema and you're in between and says, "Oh, Reuben, how you doing?" Would you answer, or would you say, would I put my ritual over actual halacha, or would I say, "I'm well, thank you for asking. Can we talk a little bit later?" It's a very interesting question for people to ponder as we finish our study of the daily Mishnah for the day. As always, feel free to contact me with questions or comments, rspolter, rspolter, @gmail.com. Have a great day.